Hello? Are you there? Dear church, when did you trade your daily bread for daily news? Pockets feel tight when it's time to count the cost, but your pay-per-view. Speak up for your stance on politics, but speak on Jesus and all of a sudden you scared of joblessness. Conservative versus liberal, a house divided. The bride of Christ looks more like she's the bride of Trump or Biden. Senselessly living as if we don't smell death's aroma. It seems like you lost your taste for grace way before Corona. The bride that always needs more. You sing, all I need is you, Lord. Plus a spouse, plus a house, plus a large bank account. I know all you need is Jesus, but seems you want him to play a role in the film you play the lead in. They say, only God can judge me, and that he will. Which is why Christ paid the price with every lash and nail, resurrected from the tomb, and because of that, we will. They might take your body, but body, listen, your soul will not be killed. Prisoners to comfort, slaves to sin, locked in cells, adopted by the one that we sought to kill. Now, how we live is a reflection if we think this is false or real. It's real.
This morning, if you got a Bible, go ahead and grab it. We are in the book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. I really hope that you do have a copy of God's Word with you this morning. If you don't, no guilt. Just bring one from now on. It'd be great. If you don't have one with you, there are paperback Bibles in the seats around you. I want you to have that, because I believe that, I know, we all know that our phones and tablets are a distraction for us, and so it's good to have a hard copy. B, we want you to have that so that you can mark it up and carry it with you. And so grab one of those this morning. If you don't have a hard copy of God's Word, please take one of the paperback Bibles with you. We want you to have that. 1 Thessalonians, chapter 4. And we are trudging through methodically the book of 1 Thessalonians. We have now, thanks to Pastor Don, concluded chapter 3. Last week, we have just 4 weeks left in this book before we break for Advent. And we pick right up where he left off last week. These are the words of God for us. 1 Thessalonians 4:1. Finally then, brothers, we ask and urge you in the Lord Jesus that as you receive from us how you ought to walk and to please God, just as you are doing, that you do so more and more. For you know what instructions we gave you through the Lord Jesus. For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor, not in the passion of lust like the Gentiles who do not know God. That no one transgress and wrong his brother in this matter, because the Lord is an avenger in all these things, as we told you beforehand and solemnly warn you. For God has not called us for impurity, but in holiness. Therefore, whoever disregards this disregards not man but God, who gives his Holy Spirit to you. So we were in New York last week, and last year was supposed to be, just kind of clue you in, 18 years in ministry. The elders had concluded they were going to send me away on an 8-week sabbatical for the first time in my ministry, and then COVID hit, and that wasn't possible, and so I ended up getting to take 1 week away on sabbatical last fall. And it was so renewing and rejuvenating that I asked them, I said, hey, instead of once every 8 to 10 years going away for a couple months, can I just go away once each fall for a week, unplug? And they graciously agreed. And so this was kind of our fall retreat sabbatical as a family. We went up into the mountains of New York and just hung out there. And there was a lot of doing nothing. We're a really, really boring family. And so a lot of books, a little bit of video games. My kids got introduced to a Wii because we don't have that in our home because we're Christians. But it was there at the the cottage that we were at. A lot of sitting by the fire, a lot of hanging out together, and a lot of Daddy Monster. And if you don't know what Daddy Monster is, I'll just kind of fill you in. Daddy Monster exists in our home, and he just comes out unannounced, particularly if my kids are being mischievous, or if they say bored. You're not allowed to say the word bored in our home. And so if they say the word bored, or maybe even in just a moment of levity, Daddy Monster will emerge. If you're wondering, it's not some creepy man who lives there, that's me. I'm Daddy Monster, and what he does is he'll just snatch up any of my 3 kids. I'll snatch up any of the 3 kids, 7-year-old Spurgeon, 5-year-old Evie, 3-year-old Augustine, and I will just devour, like corn on the cob, their ribs, or their belly button, or their throat, or whatever it is. I mean, like and I know it's painful. My wife's always like, you play too rough, but it's so fun. It's so fun. So I just do that, and so we'll all just be chilling, and all of a sudden they'll hear a growl, and my kids will all react differently. Augustine, he's like one of those fainting goats, right? My 3-year-old, he just freezes up in terror. Like his body goes to rubber, he can't control himself, and so he's really easy to catch, and they'll be like, no, Mommy, save me. I'm like, Mommy is powerless. And then I'll just go to town, and he'll squeal and cry, and then tell me before bed, which he did a couple nights, that he doesn't love me anymore. But anyway, it's so fun, it doesn't matter. And so that's Augustine, just freezes in fright. And then Spurgeon, my 7-year-old, he's gotten wise, and so I'll be like, hey, buddy, come here and give me a hug. He'd be like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, nothing, just come here. And he's like, you promised? And I'm like, okay, I promised, come here. So I give him a real hug. And then he goes to turn away, and my understanding is the hug is over, so then Daddy Monster can come out and seize him. But he has become very skittish. Not all the time, okay? We have a very healthy relationship. But he's become very skittish, and he'll kind of run away. Like at any growl, he'll run, he'll hide. I can't find him. So for him, his reaction to the monster is flight. And then my 5-year-old, my only biological child, who, as I've said before, inherited all of mine and my wife's depravity, she knows nothing of freezing up or running from the monster. She's a fighter. And lately, over the last several months, I've been growing my hair out. Some of you noticed. It's fab. And kidding. It's for my kids. They wanted me to grow up for Halloween, so it's coming off next week, all right? But and I've been growing my beard out too, which provides for her a refuge where she can grab hold of that, or my eye sockets, or whatever she can find, to try to inflict as much damage on Daddy Monster as she possibly can. So here's the reality. The monster lives, and he pursues each one of my kids, but they all respond to him differently. And we understand that. We're living in a world of a lot of legitimate fear, a lot of proverbial monsters that pursue us constantly, and the way, based upon kind of how we submit to the Lord and walk with the Lord, and based on our personality type, the way we respond to that fear is typically one of 3 ways. It's either fright, we just kind of become paralyzed and don't know what to do, or it's flight, we run away from that, or it's the fight, it is kind of bow up and face that fear and fight that fear, but that's how we respond. And the reason we start there this morning is because here in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, Paul begins to shift. He says finally to start the chapter. And that is because the first 3 chapters of the book have been this warm encouragement where he's giving thanks and commending their faithfulness. Believers in Thessalonica, their faithfulness for the Lord. And now he begins to shift, and he pushes before the believers a very real, very barbaric, very pernicious monster that hunts and haunts every single one of them in the first century, and hunts and haunts every single one of us in the 21st century. Ever present. And it is not a monster that lives out there somewhere, but it's rather a monster that dwells within. And it is the monster of what Scripture would repeatedly call the passions of our ungodly self. Ever present. Now you look at the first century, and the idea of the deification and the worship and adoration of promiscuity and ungodly sexuality was at the fore. There were multiple gods and goddesses of the culture in the first century, the Greco-Roman world. But you don't have to do much research at all to find out that the way that you appeased and satisfied each of those gods, because if we're honest, these gods are demonic, man-made creations, and all that man can think up that needs to be worshiped is that which pleases us. And so the way that each of these gods and goddesses were worshiped in the Greco-Roman world was through multiple acts of radical sexuality. And so pedophilia is rampant in the first century. Homosexuality is rampant in the first century. Orgies and sexual parties are rampant in the first century. Every deviance that you can think of. And just as in the 21st century, the one aspect or aura of sexuality that is almost frowned upon in the first century, that is seen as mundane, as boring, is sex within marriage. And you can do research today, 2,000 years later, and you find that Hollywood is far more apt in movie form and television form to put two unwed people in a sexual relationship on television than wed, because there is an 11 times greater viewership for unwed sex on television than for wed sex. And it's always fascinating to me how historians and sociologists, non-believers, and even Christians get a little unsettled when we look at God's prescription for his design of sexuality. Sex is his idea. It's just sad that the world talks about God's design a lot more than the church does. Sex is his idea, but people get up in arms about this when, even if they disregard scripture, if they just look back historically, we have seen so many lives ruined through the monster of the lust of the flesh. And we have seen almost every empire, it can't be argued, almost every empire that has risen to power over the course of modern history, the last 3,000 years even, has begun to crumble. And watch this closely. When they deny God through a belief that what I want to do is more critical and important than what he calls me to do. And so there's a denial of him. As a matter of fact, theologians and sociologists have traced it even today as to why teenagers, so you might be a teenager here, maybe a young adult, and you grew up in the church and you abandoned the faith for the law. Why is that such an epidemic within Christianity? That teenagers grow up in the church, they grow up in Christian homes, they grow up in youth group, and they abandon the faith for a while, particularly when they're in college and shortly after post-college. And the reason why they've concluded, they'll veil it and cloak it and masquerade it in intelligent language as if they can't possibly believe in God, as if no enlightened person ever has. But yet really behind this, it's been concluded by numerous studies that their disbelief in God stems not from an awakening that convinces them intellectually that he's not there, but rather from an innate desire to do that which they know he forbids. They run from this. It was the way of things in the first century, in the Greco-Roman world. It was like this throughout the Dark Ages. It's been like this at multiple civilizations across time. But it was not this way always in the United States. I'm not saying the monster wasn't there. But in the mid-18th century, 250 years ago, there was a revival, a 2-decade-long revival that swept across this land before we were even a nation. It was known as the Great Awakening. It was birthed out of prayer and doctrinal purity and allegiance to Scripture and produced more than 1 million conversions across this country. And flowing from that, even among those who were not believers, there was a certain moral standard that was kind of stamped upon the heart and conscience of most Americans. And so you proceed through the 19th century, even through the age of enlightenment and into the 20th century, and this moral standard stood until just shortly after post-World War II, when for the first time in our nation's history, women outnumbered men. The way it had always been kind of woven into the fabric of society is that the men would pursue the women. I know it sounds super antiquated, but the men would pursue the women, and they would ask to enter into some type of courting relationship with them. But now you had millions of women and fewer men because so many had been left dead on the soil of Europe. And so they introduced into culture the idea of dating, which at first was just a moniker for prostitution, but then quickly caught on. And for 2 generations, or two decades, the 40s and 50s, it was kind of this silent thought process around sexuality. No one talked about it, but America was becoming increasingly more promiscuous. More was being tolerated. And then, of course, if you know history at all, or maybe some of you were alive for that time, the 1960s brought in this sexual revolution. And though we don't understand it, though we live in ignorance of it, the sexual revolution of the 1960s forever altered the landscape of this society. There are things that we just accepted that we can't imagine a world without, that those living in the 1940s and 50s could never have imagined a world with. For example, born out of the sexual revolution, it's undeniable, was the legalization of abortion. You had an increasing promiscuity. No longer was marriage revered and seen as sacred. No longer was chastity celebrated and virginity something that needed to be held on to. And so now men and women, boys and girls, they could all just kind of sleep together and figure out who their partner, who their wife, who their husband, if you even believe in marriage anymore, should be. And so there was an increasing number of unwed pregnancies. And so leading up into the early 1970s, the conversation became, well, we have this life now in the womb that we don't want. It's an inconvenience to us. So shouldn't we be allowed to barbarize and butcher this life so that we can go on with ours? And in 1973, it would have been shocking to generations preceding. Even the most debased societies of the world, it would have been shocking, the thoughts of the murder of innocent life. Roe v. Wade was passed, and now roughly 63 million babies over the last 50 years have been murdered, mostly in the name of comfort and convenience. A product of a society that said we don't want to submit to God anymore because he is telling us to do that which we don't want to do, or telling us not to do that which we want to do. That's right. 63, so I've tried to push this on our radar before, but I was thinking this week, man, if we did a walk for life this morning, and we all gathered together and we said, hey, we're just gonna take one step, not a mile, not a 5K, just one step for every murdered life through the atrocity of abortion since 1973. One step. We would walk from here, Clearwater, Florida, to Seattle, Washington, and back 5 times. A Holocaust born out of the monster within. Not only that, though, unwed births, as I've already mentioned, went up. Prior to 1960, unwed births in the United States stood at a rate of 5.3% of every baby born, about 1 out of every 20. Now, not surprisingly, 41% of births in America are unwed, and that does not even count all of the aborted babies through unwed pregnancies. Divorce since 1960, since the sexual revolution, has more than doubled, and why not? Used to be a big deal to get divorced. Now it's not a big deal because what is paramount is my happiness, what I want. Pornography is on the rise. It was shame, like literally, I know this is crazy because you have so many people today who are talking about, even Christians who try to justify pornography and non-Christians who talk about how it's a good thing. But up until the 1960s, even those far outside of Christ, even agnostics and atheistic thinkers would have talked about how detrimental pornography was. And now pornographic sites, we know this, I've talked about before, but pornographic sites are visited more in the United States every month than Netflix, Twitter, and Amazon combined. The pornographic industry makes more the National Basketball Association, the NFL, the NHL, and Major League Baseball combined annually. Almost double, in fact. And it has led to, there are numerous things. We did a podcast, I'd encourage you to listen to it. It has led to so many ills in our society, and one of those has been the sexual objectification of girls. And guys too, I understand that this is not specific to one gender or another, but so many young men, so many older men today can't even look at a woman. Some of you girls, you think I'm antiquated, you think our youth leaders are antiquated. We're looking out for you. We understand the monster within, and we understand that some of us here, some of us guys, if we can just be honest this morning, you don't have to say it to anybody else. That'd probably be weird in this moment anyway, but you're just addicted to pornography and no one knows, and it's just destroying your life. There's nothing good that's gonna come of it. It's been on the rise since the 60s. Pedophilia, look at the statistics. When you tell a society again and again that they're just matter, they don't actually matter, unless it's for political advancement, but they're just matter, they're just a collection of cells, that there is no God, there is no objective moral right and wrong, then all of a sudden, all types of, it doesn't stop, the train doesn't stop. It just keeps barreling forward, and now pedophilia is on the rise, and many are trying to justify it in our day. And then sex trafficking. All of the stats point to that sex trafficking has blossomed since the 1960s, since the sexual revolution. Just to be clear, the sexual revolution basically taught, this is the will of God, that I dress in a way that makes me feel confident, that I do what makes me feel good, that I look at what makes me happy, even short term, that I am God and King, and therefore my will is the will of God. That's the message of the sexual revolution. You're right. And if we're paying attention at all, we have to admit that we are in a second sexual revolution today. Things that would have made even those adherents of the sexual revolution in the 1960s blush, we are now pushing, our society is pushing forward, even Christians are pushing forward. And so we need to hear the word of the Lord through the pen of the Apostle Paul this morning. Some of you young people, you're probably looking at me, maybe even older people, maybe that guy, you're trying to justify your pornographic addiction. There's lots of ways that we try to justify sin. But you're looking at me this morning skeptical, as if I have something to gain by calling you, there's a lot of talk, there's even best-selling books written about your best life now. The scripture points us to what is going to make the most sense of life and society. And yet again and again, historically, empires, nations, citizens have again and again said, no, the ways of God are outdated. We're going to run with our way. We're going to submit to the God of our own heart. And it brings upon them, it's not even shocking, it's not surprising, it brings upon them complete devastation, calamity, and destruction again and again and again. And so what does the Lord say for us? Finally, here's the shift from all encouragement to warning. He's not getting on to them, because the church at Thessalonica is not like the church at Corinth, from all indication. They're faithful, but he wants them to continue in that faithfulness. So he says, finally, my brothers and sisters, we ask, we urge you, that's what I'm doing this morning. We plead with you. We've seen the devastation and the destruction through the monster. We ask and urge you in the Lord Jesus, that as you receive from us how you ought to walk and to please God, just as you are doing, that you do so more and more. I love this about Paul. What is he saying here in this opening verse? You already know what the right thing is. I think there's a dearth in knowledge today, biblical knowledge, that's very pervasive in our society and even in our churches. But I also think there is a colossal dearth in those who actually have that knowledge. They know what is right and wrong. They know what pleases the Lord. They know what is forbidden. And yet there's a dearth in the application of that knowledge. They're actually doing that. And Paul here is going to say, you are, what you know you should be doing, continue to do that more and more. So some of you this morning, you need to hear a warning against your pornographic addiction, a warning against your infidelity, a warning against that affair that you're dabbling with or that you are in right now, a warning against, hear me say this, I know you're not like this, a warning against some of the shows that you watch or some of the books that you read or some of the magazines that you peruse. Like there needs to be a warning. But some of you, you're actually walking in faithfulness. It doesn't mean you don't struggle. The monster's still there, but the monster's subdued and you're walking in faithfulness, and we need to hear the word of Paul. Keep going. Keep submitting ourselves to the Lord here. Verse number 2, for you know what instructions we gave you through the Lord Jesus. And then he's going to lay out 3 responses that all of us should have to the monster within. And the first is flight. Look what he says, verse number 3, for this is the will of God. This is what God desires for your life. People run around, we just had our first young adult gathering a month ago. We invite you out if you're a young adult. In a week and a half, we're gonna have another one, but we talked about the will of God. Everybody's asking, what's God's will for my life? We go through a midlife crisis, we get saved, we come into a church, hear the gospel, get saved. We're younger people, we're trying to figure out what is God's will for my life? Well, there's certain declarations of scripture that points us clearly to God's will, and this is one of them. And I think it's interesting, I think it's really important. We ask what God's will for our lives is oftentimes. We're very conscious of his will aligning with our happiness. When rather, when you look at scripture, the will of God is always about the honor of God through our lives. And so I think if we were more consumed, this is for free, I didn't say it Thursday night. If we were more consumed with what actually honors and pleases the Lord, which is what Paul is calling us to here, we would figure out all the other questions. And he says, this is the will of God. Your sanctification, which is a theological word throughout the New Testament that means you're becoming more like Jesus or you're becoming holy. And then he really kind of narrows in that scope here. So he says, what's a part of that? What does that look like? That you abstain from sexual immorality. This is the will of God. Your sanctification is that you abstain from sexual immorality, or the King Jimmy would say fornication. So we were up in New York. We were up on top of a mountain there in the Catskills, and you would walk outside at night, and it was just black, dark. See the stars, see the moon, if the clouds weren't covering it. It's kind of eerie almost. And the last night we're there, we're gathering up the trash. The 2 youngest, Augustine and Evie, had gone to bed. So I'm gathering up the trash, and you have to walk down the driveway, down this path to the trash cans, which are down at the base of the road. And as I'm gathering up, Spurgeon comes to me, my 7-year-old, and is like, hey, Daddy, I want to go with you. I want to take the trash with you. And I'm like, why not? Come on, bro. So I've got my sweatpants and my hoodie. It's like 40 degrees outside, and my boots on. And Spurgeon throws on his Chuck Taylors, and he's in his tidy whities, and that's it. And he's ready to roll. So he's got a bag of trash, I've got a few bags of trash, and we set off. And it's exciting, and it's exhilarating, and it's fun for him for like the first 15 steps. And then he's just kind of trudging beside me down this pathway, total dark. I left my phone at the house, total dark. And I just thought, it's kind of getting a little mundane. We need to spice this thing up. And earlier that day, as we were leaving the house to go to lunch, we had noticed that one of the trash cans had been pulled over by a wild animal, and trash had been strewn everywhere, so we had to clean that up. And so this is in the back of my 7-year-old's mind. It's in the back of my mind, if I'm honest. And I say, hey, buddy, what's that like in the trail, like there in front of us? And you can't see anything. So there could have been something there, actually. I'm like, what is that? He's like, what do you think it is? I'm like, I don't know, bro. Let's keep going, though. And so I feel his little hand slide onto my arm. And we keep walking, and then all of a sudden he goes, Daddy, we hear some rustling in the leaves. He goes, Daddy, you got your gun? I'm like, bro, it's New York. No, unfortunately not. And so I don't have it. And so we get to the trash cans, we put it in, and we go turn. He goes, Daddy, let's walk faster back to the house. And so we start to walk. He actually starts to run ahead, and I'm like, bro, you could trip, and that would make it easier for the bear to get you, so you need to come back here with me. And so we come here, and by the time we kind of crest the hill, and the cottage comes in view, he is at a full sprint. This kid doesn't run, by the way. He's incredibly lazy, but full sprint in his tighty whities, in the moonlight, looks like a wild animal back into the house, right? Just running from this invisible predator behind us that might or might not be there, but running for his life. As I'm reading 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 3 this week, and as I read and was reminded of Paul's words there in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18, that's the image that filled my mind. We don't have an unknown might or might not be there predator. We have a predator lurking within who is ever presently pursuing us, trying to bring about our destruction. And what does Paul say in 1 Corinthians 6:18? Run, like flee fornication or flee sexual immorality. The same Greek word there in 1 Corinthians 6:18 is the Greek word we find here in 1 Thessalonians 4:3. It is porneia. We've talked about it before. No secret. You don't even have to guess as to what English words we've derived from the Greek word porneia. Pornographic and pornography. It carries with it the idea of anything that is abhorrent in the eyes of God. And just so we're clear, anything that is abhorrent in the eyes of God, which is anything outside of the beauty of sex between a man and a woman in marriage, anything else abhorrent in the eyes of God always leads to the destruction of life. And ultimately, Jesus would argue in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the destruction of soul. So we run. And if I'm honest, as a pastor, as a Christian, I don't see a lot of running from Christians today. I see a lot of toying. So I just wanted to lay out a list. Like, you don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with me. You can come talk to me afterwards about this. We can argue and debate. That's fine. But this is what I see, ways that we are toying with the monster of sexual immorality, promiscuity, lust of the flesh today. So there's a few ways to consider. Number one, flirtation, which is great between you and your wife, you and your husband. It's great. But what's happening is that's lost, and we think it's innocence. Now, I'm all for friendliness, kindness. You guys get that. But I think we understand. I know there's a fine line, but we understand when we're crossing that line, we're stirring up emotionally within somebody else. We're leading them to think certain things or to feel certain ways. And flirtation leads to this. Historically, generation after generation, flirtation leads to. Flirtation was not designed by God to be an end in itself. And sexuality, intercourse was. And so flirtation is one of the ways. Number two, the second way, abstinence within marriage or laziness. I know. Believe me, I get it. But I just talked to so many guys who were just such a bum in their marriage when it comes to actually pursuing or loving or caring for, providing emotionally and spiritually for their wife. And I know it goes both ways here. Laziness. Paul actually addresses this in 1 Corinthians chapter 7. After he says it's good for a man not to touch a woman, so God's ultimate design there, he goes on to say, but if you burn with lust, get married, and if there is an issue basically within the marriage, take a short season apart under mutual agreement, and then come back together sexually so there's not temptation. And yet that's not the way, at least that I hear, within marriage today. Once again, our society, in conjunction with our souls, has made sex outside of marriage exciting, thrilling, and sex inside of marriage mundane. Number three, media and literature. So I just don't have time this morning. Don't have time to talk about all the TV shows. Look, if let's just say it this way. If it's basically pornography, it's hard to justify that Jesus would watch it. Okay? So TV shows, movies, being pushed forward, this radical, sexual, progressive ideology and the second sexual revolution that everything is fine, everything is okay, this is exciting, this is thrilling, or books that we read. or magazines that we peruse through. Dangerous. You might be like, oh, that's not me. I don't read anything. I don't watch anything. How about this then? Number 4, social media. Almost every teenage boy today who's being introduced to pornography is being introduced to pornography, according to sociology and statistics, through the lens of social media. Almost everyone. And I understand there's a gift and there's a good side, a bright side to social media, but sexually speaking, it's leading to objectification. It's leading to massive depression. It's leading to poor self-image. It's leading to a depraved identity even among believers. That who I am is on that screen. And who I am is tied to how many people will like or love this post or comments. And so when they comment, I feel great. And when they don't, life is almost not worth living. Number 5, we gotta be careful. Guys, we gotta be careful with social media. Like, please, like if you're, hey, I love Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat. If you're like one of those people that love social media, I don't, but if you're one of those, that's fine. Redeem it for the glory of God. But be so careful. Like, be so careful. I get it. I sound like such an old fogey, but your wife should have complete access to your social media. Like, she should. It's not, your parents should. Like, it's just not worth it. Like, there's too much destruction. Number 5, fantasizing. Like, because we're not actually, I've actually encountered Christians because they're not actually engaging in immorality, physical immorality, but they're fantasizing through. Once again, this is objectification. Basically what that means, in case you're wondering, is it's when you look at somebody, instead of seeing a soul, you see an object for pleasure and gratification. Number 6, this goes without saying, but pornography. It's never justifiable. And we'll get to this here in point 3, but we are harming even through fantasizing and pornographic use and social media intake when it comes to this pernicious, promiscuous monster within. We are harming others through this intake, even though it may on the surface seem as though we're not. Paul says, run from fornication, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 18. Run from porneia. And then he goes on to say, every sin that a man does, the sins we do, is outside the body, but he who commits sexual immorality sins against his own body. This is the will of God, that you be holy, that you become like Jesus, that you please God, it says earlier in the passage. So abstain from sexual immorality. So here's the thing, every time we talk about sex here, there's always somebody online, maybe there's comments right now. Thanks for being here. If you're watching online, thanks for commenting. But I just want to ask just a question to consider this morning. If everything in you grates against what we're saying, biblically or even philosophically, ask yourself this morning, to what standard do you submit yourself? Because most people, when it comes to sex, submit themselves to a standard of one God, and that is themselves. And that is frightful in any arena. That's right. That you are Lord and judge over all aspects of life. So we run, we flee. Number 2, second thing that we do, we fight. Because we can never fully outrun the monster. We can outrun temptation that lurks, but the monster lives within, and he's always going to be there. Verse number 4, that each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor. So that is doing what is right, to bring glory to the Lord, to please the Lord. So each one of you know how to control his own body. And there is, in the face of this monster of promiscuity and sexual immorality and pornography and addiction and fornication and homosexuality and on the list rolls, there's clear calls of Scripture, particularly from Paul, to fight. Now, we're all familiar with the concept of fighting. As much as love is talked about on both sides of the political aisle today, love is lost on both sides of the political aisle. We don't love well, we fight. We don't even fight well, we just fight a lot about everything. And some things need to be fought for, truth, particularly in love and kindness. Truth needs to be fought for. But I think, this is how I, so some of you this morning are like, man, this is my first time here, or I've been coming for a couple weeks, or I brought a friend, and you're talking about sex. Okay? Everyone else is talking about sex. It's time the church talks about it. Okay? It's God's idea. So, but also I just want to, I kind of want to thrust something before your friend this morning, push something on your radar just for us to consider together. When we talk about controlling our bodies, not in the passion of lust, but we talk about controlling our bodies. What we are doing is we are ultimately, for the glory of God, looking out for one another. Looking out for my sisters in the faith, looking out for my brothers in the faith, looking out for others, looking out for unbelievers. We are walking, yes, in purity, but purity is not what we're pursuing. We're walking in purity as we're pursuing Jesus for the glory of God, for the good of others. And so we fight against this. And some of us need to stop fighting over whatever it is you're fighting over today. And you need to be more concerned with the devil within, with fighting this ever-present monster. And Paul says that each one of you would learn, because it doesn't come naturally, would learn through submission to the Holy Spirit and Scripture, would learn to control his body in holiness and in honor. So we fight. And number 3, no surprise here, we fear. In the face of the love bubble, teddy bear, culturally appropriate Jesus, Paul pushes this one for. Because I was talking to Sean this week. It's just crazy. Maybe this is you. I don't know. Maybe this is you watching online. But how many Christians have bought a lie that Jesus is the person who would absolutely condone and pat you on the back to do whatever it is that you want to do? That's just absurd. Like it's craziness. It just shows that we haven't even read the Bible, and we certainly don't believe it. And in the face of that, he says this, not in the passion of lust, or in other words, not just whatever you want to do, like the Gentiles who do not know God, that no one transgress and wrong his brother in this matter. So your sexual sin, while it does harm you, 1 Corinthians 6:18, it always also harms someone else. Always. We don't have time to go down that trail and follow that line of thought this morning, but always. That none of you go beyond and defraud, transgress, wrong his brother in this matter, because the Lord is a buddy. Or the Lord is so gracious. He is. I would actually argue he's a buddy too. He's your friend. He is a friend. But him being a friend and him being gracious does not nullify the reality that he is an avenger. In the first century, this Greek word for avenger was used by historians to signify, designate a champion. Someone who would go out for the people who were being attacked, who were being on the verge of destruction, would go out for the people, for the king, and would fight the enemy, a warrior, a mighty man. And he would face evil, destruction, injustice, and he would bring peace through conquest, through the eradication and annihilation of that injustice and evil. That's the avenger. We think about it in today's vernacular, we would think of Thor or Iron Man or maybe Captain America. Definitely not Spider-Man. He can't do anything. But we would think of this. What do they do? What do the Avengers do? I mean, it's so weird in a society where nothing's right and wrong that you can actually have heroes go out and fight wrong that doesn't actually exist. But whatever, that's beside the point. But what do the Avengers do? They see evil, transgression, destruction, injustice, and they go out in might to face the injustice, to battle the evil, the destroyer, so they can set right, make peace through their conquest. That's the idea of an avenger. That Christ, yes, our substitute, yes, our Lord, our gracious Redeemer, the lover of our souls, our comfort, our assurance, yes, but our avenger has dealt and will deal with all transgression.
That's right.
And this is so frightful because listen to Jesus' words there in the Sermon on the Mount. He says, speaking about sexual sin, speaking about your pornography use that you would say is an addiction, but it is addiction. He says, if your right eye causes you to stumble, just get rid of it. If your right hand causes you to be offended, to sin, cut it off. And he's not talking about literal, I don't think he's talking about literally plucking out your eye or cutting off your right hand, but he's talking about the radical way in which we are to fight and battle sin in our lives. Because just when we think we're over it, or just when we've confessed it for the 100th time, it rises back up to attack again. And so we run from it, we flee, and we fight it, and we stand in fear of the Lord. Jesus makes it pretty clear in Scripture, there are people, in the Sermon on the Mount, there are people who think they're Christians, but yet their rank unbridled sexuality reveals that their soul is actually in danger of the fire of hell. And could it be this morning that for some of us, we are grossly deceived, and it is our thirst for gratification that's deceiving us? Now, Paul kind of wraps down this passage, and we're out of time, so we'll just do that together this morning in verse 7 when he says this. For God has not called us. Let me just pause there for a second. We really need to hear this. We flew back in town on Monday this week from New York, and we hit the ground running with work, with school, and with our house. We moved. You guys might know that, but we moved, and we're in the midst of a fixer-upper, true fixer-upper. And so we're just over at the house working on different stuff. And Tuesday, I was back and forth from the church here at the church some, working, and at the house working some. And Tuesday afternoon kind of concluded early evening with Danielle and I saying, okay, I think we've done everything we can do today. Let's get in the car. She had her car, I have my car. And Danielle said, hey, look, you take the kids home. I'll go get groceries. I'm like, okay. The problem is that I have 2 credit cards. I had left one in New York by accident. It happens. And it happens to be the only card that is also linked to it's linked to the only card my wife has. So she had no credit card, so we're sharing a card. So I'm like, here, you take the credit card, go get groceries. I'll take the kids home. Now, I had been painting. When I paint, I like to wear my glasses. I had left my good glasses here at the church, so the only pair of glasses I had, my son Spurgeon had stepped on them, so they're crooked. So I'm wearing those. And I was wearing a Georgia Bulldog shirt, Go Dogs, so I didn't want to get paint on, so I had taken that off. And when I take my shirt off, this is just a specimen, okay? And so you don't even want to see that. So I got my crooked glasses on, I'm bare-chested, I got paint on my chest, I got paint in my hair, it's bad. And Danielle says, hey, just take the kids home. So I walk out, I'm just gonna leave my shirt here because I still got paint on me, I don't want to get paint on it. And it's gonna be a quick drive home. So I go to get in the car, my kids come running out, Spurgeon and Evie buckle themselves in, Augustine is naked from belly button down. I'm like, what happened to him? And she's like, he peed himself again. I'm like, all right, so potty training, it's terrible. So I put him in, I'm like, do not pee until we get home. So I buckle him in, we pull out onto East Bay, we're on our way back to the condo, and I'm like, she's like, hey, look, we don't have any food at the house except for cereal, so just feed the kids cereal for dinner. We're usually good parents, I promise. And so I'm like, I don't want cereal. Do you guys want cereal? They're like, no, we don't want cereal. I'm like, what do you want? They're like, we want pizza. And I'm like, I see a Little Caesars. And I hardly ever eat cardboard, but I was like, that looks good for dinner because they have those hot and ready. So we can just drive through the drive-thru and they're hot and ready. And so I pull in, I order. They're doing this 3-meat pizza for like $7 and the hot and ready for like $5 or $6. So I pull up to the window. There's this teenage boy standing there. And it's around this time as my toddler rolls down his window in the back seat that I realize that not only am I wearing crooked glasses, bare-chested, all glory, paint in my hair, and naked toddler in the back seat, but also in addition to that, I have no money. And so I'm like, hey, how much is it, bro? He's like $17.09. I'm like, for Little Caesars. It's ridiculous. And I'm like, hey, my wife has my credit card. I've got $14 in cash here, which for you teenagers, that's like real money. and $14 in cash and a quarter. What can I get for this? And I don't know why. Maybe I've been acclimated this year to thinking he was going to be like, it's okay, here you go, here's free food, right? He's like, you can get 2 hot and readies, 2 pepperoni pizza, not your 3 meat. It's $14.25, so I give him my, or $14.02, I give him my $14.25, I wait for my 23 cents because you're not giving me nothing, I'm not giving you nothing, right? And so he gives me that bag, I get the hot and readies, I'm pulling out back onto the road. Some of you are never coming back. I pull out onto the road, and I just think to myself, I wonder what that kid's thinking right now. Like, there's no way he would ever guess who I actually am. That I have a home. That I actually have a credit card or a wife. He's like, yeah, right, the wife in your imagination. Like, there's just no way. He would have taken the evidence before him and he would have made certain judgments. And that's what we do. We judge and we define and we condemn based on evidence or based on speculation a lot of times. And we live in a very judgmental culture among very judgmental people with a soul that tries to justify, but particularly if you're a Christian this morning, oftentimes reminds you of how far short you're falling. And maybe you're here this morning and you've had an abortion. Or maybe you're sleeping with your boyfriend or girlfriend, living with them. Maybe you're in an affair, you're contemplating an affair. Maybe you're addicted to pornography. Maybe you're loose, promiscuous. Maybe you've adopted an unbiblical Jesus that just allows you to do whatever you want to do. But you've heard the word this morning, and conviction's coming. By the way, conviction's a really good thing. Conviction reframes us, draws us to repentance, sets us straight. But true conviction does not define us. I need us to hear this morning. When we hear Paul say, for God has not called you, what he's doing here is he's reminding us, he's reminding the church of Thessalonica, this breath of fresh air, that you have been called by the graciousness of God. And your identity now is the righteousness and purity of Jesus. And there's a dual reality to this calling. He calls you by grace to be his child, to qualify you so that when the Father looks upon you this morning, in spite of, you're truly his, in spite of your failings, your fantasizing, your lust, you're looking at pornography, you're reading or watching something that you shouldn't, even if they're, in spite of all that, if you're truly his by faith, he sees you as pure. Pure. Because he sees you through the veil of Christ's blood. But now practically he's saying, since I have declared you to be pure, live according to that calling. For God has not called you, that's all of us if you're a Christian, he's not called you for or to impurity, but to holiness. I've defined it before, I'll just define it again. Holiness means intimacy with Jesus and imitation of Jesus. Love Jesus, follow the ways of Jesus. That's what he's called you to practically now. And then he finishes with this, and this is just for those of us who are like, I don't like this. Therefore, whoever disregards this, disregards not Aaron, not a political party, not an opinion of man, not a philosophical construct, but disregards God who gives his Holy Spirit to you. So your issue is not with me this morning. Your issue is with God. Will we submit ourselves to him and walk in purity for Jesus, for the good of others, for the good of our souls? Or will we follow that way of Proverbs 14:12 that seems right? Because we want it to be right, and because culture says it's right, but leads to death. Let's pray. Father, we thank you this morning for the identity that we have in Jesus, that we are not defined by transgression any longer. If we're truly yours, if we have placed faith in Christ, we're not defined, identified by what we've done, but rather what Jesus has done for us. We have grace, we have positional purity and righteousness. And God, I pray that we would live in that we would fight the monster within, that we would fear the Lord, that we would flee transgression, particularly in the sexual realm, that we would seek to please you and to honor you and to do your will. Give us the resolve to do that.